Hello, in this video I want to talk specifically about the number 144, look at its history, trace it a little bit back further, especially through cathedrals and older sites, Amiens Cathedral, Bouvet, but then finally towards Parma. But these are some shots from an earlier video showing how the Pentagon is actually aligned to the Capitol building if you extend it out into a pentagram. The important part is, as you see, as I extend that triangle outwards, that the distance from the Pentagon to that peak, so from the Pentagon wall to the alignment point, at least according to Google Earth, is 414 feet. Britannia Monument in Norfolk, England, 144 feet. There are lots and lots of 140 feet structures, but just to go through some before we go into the deeper parts of it, just to show. So in Glasgow, Nelson's Column is 144 feet. So not just in, but also in Peru, the Quinua, I hope that's the right pronunciation, obelisk. But so often is the case, even the elevation. So I think that they've placed it at a special elevation as well. Also the Armenian Genocide Memorial. So memorials, temples, important public buildings will have these harmonic numbers, and on this one especially 144. But the great cathedrals of Europe, so you've Amiens Cathedral. Again, these are beautiful buildings. They got layer upon layer upon layer of meaning, symbolism, and it really goes quite deep. And in my videos, I sort of tend to focus on the measures and the more tangible aspects, but it really runs so much deeper. So the labyrinth in Amiens, also notice the swastikas, predate the Nazi era for a long time. It's one of these ancient sort of symbols, but it's got been tarnished, of course, by what's happened earlier in the last century. However, the interesting point about Amiens is that the height is 144 Roman feet, sourced from Nova Building the Great Cathedrals. Excellent documentary. I'll put the link in the description box. It's really worth a watch. Also, Bouvet Cathedral, another one of those of the great cathedrals. Same thing's happening here, but it's a little bit well. It's actually quite nice. But the cathedral's wonderful, but it also has astronomical clock. Lund Cathedral has another great astronomical clock as well. But the height once here is 144 medieval royal feet. In that building the great cathedrals, I'll also discuss how the medieval royal feet can be found in Notre Dame Cathedral in France. But what we have is both cathedrals using a different unit, so that Bouvet made theirs higher, but they're both for 144 feet, and they very carefully planned the use of this number. But by using the royal foot, Bouvet made their cathedral a little bit higher and therefore a little bit grander. There's quite a bit into this, but first we'll look into some of the reasons why the cathedral makers use this. So in the Bible, in Revelations, they talk about the New Jerusalem, or the Holy City. A lot of versions will use stadia, King James Version, and others will use furlong. But the important part is that he measured its wall 144 cubits. King James Version will describe it as 216 feet. 1 cubit equals 1.5 feet, but 144 goes throughout the Bible, but we'll look quickly again to the more ancient origins. But as most people are familiar with, the Bible we'll start with this. So New Jerusalem, the description of the holy city, the edge length and area 144 will come up in, so the total edge length 144,000, whether it's stadia or furlongs is insignificant at this point. The walls were described as 144,000 cubits, but in other parts, for instance, they'll talk about the 12 tribes of Israel, and 112,000 each, so 144,000. There are also many other little references here and there, but of course, because the cathedral, we're discussing the Bible, but there's more ancient origins to this, and we'll look at that next. So in tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which describes the flood, it was 120 cubits what the arc of Utnapishtim, 120 cubits long, 120 cubits wide, and 120 cubits high. You'll get all the same beautiful numbers going on, but for instance, the area of each face would be 144,000 units squared, and the total edge length would be 1,440 cubits. So many of the Bible legends and references can actually be traced directly back to Sumer and Babylon, Egypt, the Indus, and other parts of the world. They've just been recrafted a little bit. Now if you look at the Philippines, Our Lady of Light in Concainta in Rizal, the Philippines. I'm not sure if I pronounced the city right, but the province of Rizal. We can have now look at Sydney. The Ibero-American Memorial has a number of statues of independence leaders, including Dr. Jose Patracio Rizal, independence leader of the Philippines, and Freemason. Throughout this whole series we see those connections, but this is a picture of the current church. The first church was demolished and reconstructed 1966 to 1988, and I'm going to use the original measurements, which was 48 feet wide. Touchstone building, over and over you'll see 48 feet, the Arc de Triomphe, but going back to ancient times, and the Parthenon in Athens, which also provides 48 feet, a harmony point between common, Doric and Ionic feet. All across Australia, 36 feet is an important a reoccurring measurement, and all across the world, so in London and Winnipeg and these other major centres. That's all relevant because the original church was 144 feet long, 36 feet high, and 48 feet wide. So 140 feet long, 144 feet long, 144 hands wide, and 144 palms high. So Our Lady of Light in the Rizal in the Philippines resonates with 144. Christchurch Cathedral, Oxford, England, going back to the 12th century, 144 feet high. The origin of a foot's another question, but I'll go into that in future videos. But Palma Cathedral in Spain, the nave is 144 feet high. It brings up interesting questions, but just to carry on through, the length of the nave at the Holy Trinity Church in Hull, Yorkshire, which goes back to the 14th, late 13th century possibly, 144 feet long. In recent years, the Basilica of Our Lady in Poland, Lichen, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, sorry, but the height of the nave, again, 144 feet high. Coming through to the modern era, Columbus, Ohio, First Christian Church, built 1942, 144 feet long. So it's certainly a very, very important number. And some sites I've mentioned earlier at 120 feet, for instance, gives us 1,440 inches, such as the International Peace Gardens. Those towers have probably been demolished, but the Campanile of the bell tower in War Memorial in Kansas City University, 144 inches. Same with the Women's Monument in Bloemfontein, which is connected to the Voortrekker Monument and a whole movement regarding this occult esoteric architecture. But staying with the modern era, the One Bryant Park, the Bank of America building in New York City, the total height of the building is 1,200 feet, or 14,400 inches. The height of the building without the tower, again, well, that's 945 feet, and it connects to some the Bank of China building in Hong Kong by IMP, but sticking with 144. What's the reason for this number? Why it's so important? Let's have a look. to begin with, 144 is a Fibonacci, therefore it describes this Fibonacci spiral, and therefore it connects us directly to the golden ratio or the divine proportion or phi. Integral, beautiful thing that describes so much of nature, such as sunflowers, shells, hurricanes, galaxies, all run around this. But the 12th Fibonacci number, 144, 12 squared. Lovely coincidence, let's call it. Previous episodes, I mentioned the use of 155 being a standard in this type of secret occult architecture, and 55 is the 10th Fibonacci, and it's the 10th Tetractys or the 10th Pythagorean triangular number, which connects directly to Pythagoras and the Pythagorean schools. Beautiful harmonies we have here. What's more is that the number 144 and 1440 is a beautiful number across multiple dimensions. So 3 to the first plus 4 to the second plus 5 to the third. 3, 4, 5 Pythagorean triangles, but also 3 to the first plus 4 to the second plus 5 to the third plus 4 to the sixth gives us 1440. So it's a lovely number in that way, but 3, 4, 5, 6 is the polar diameter of the Earth in Egyptian royal miles. So we have the 3, 4, 5 triangle and a reference to Earth through Egyptian royal miles. Yet it also carries on into Platonic solids, again like from Pythagoras to Plato, but we have the Octahedron, which is used to describe also the element of air. The 8 triangles, 180 degrees per triangle, so we have 1440 degrees describing the octahedron. These lovely connections coming back in together, and you'll see more and more how these harmonize through the measures, but let's look a little bit more further. We also see it in the Vesica Pisces, which is the fundamental construction of sacred geometry, and from the Vesica Pisces we go on to create the seed of life, the flower of life, out of which the Platonic solids emerge. But the rhombus inside, which defines the square root of 3, I've spoken about that before, but 240 degrees describes the outside of the obtuse angle of that rhombus, and that is 1440 minutes. So 14,400 minutes comes from the Vesica Pisces. From the Vesica Pisces emerges the hexagon. The outside of a hexagon, 240 degrees, 6 of those angles, 1440 degrees, just like the octahedron. Time, 1,440 minutes in a day. Time, the Mayan calendar, one Baktun, 144,000. So we have arithmetic, geometry, time, and well, we also have astronomy. On the Longfoot scale, the ancient scale derived from studies of Stonehenge, 1.056 is a Longfoot. On the yards, we have sun and moon, both corresponding to 144. Astronomy, geometry, arithmetic, time, and well, navigation. So much comes from this. We also get musical scales from there. For instance, 144 is 192 span on the Pythagorean scale, or scientific tuning, G, the 192 hertz. 144 feet is 432 hands, 432A. All these numbers here also have astronomical and geometric and arithmetic properties, the breakdown of 144, but sticking with there, so we have covered geometry, astronomy, music, and arithmetic, the 4 highest, the Quadrivium of the 7 liberal arts. One final site worth mentioning is the Basilica of the Sacred Family in Barcelona, which will be 1440 Cremona hands high once completed, and it's due for completion in 2026. That's 144 years after it was begun. Thank you, hope you enjoyed, have a good one.